Thank you to our $5 patron, Sin is Lancelot, and a big thank you to our $25 patron, the Mr. Greed. Before I have a quick discussion on whether you would want a Resurrección from Bleach and or a Assault Mode from 7 Deadly Sins, please do me a favor, leave what you would want before the video in the comment section down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, make sure to hit that little notification bell so you miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below, and I please would appreciate any support you're willing to give. Now, let's get into it. What's up, guys? I got Pencil Green, and yeah, what would y'all want? Would y'all want a Resurrection or Assault Mode? And here's the thing, right? I'm not just talking about like from the pure power aesthetic, because I'm pretty sure I've been weird with my multipliers, considering like you could argue a couple weird things for Assault Mode, but you can essentially say Resurrection is equal to or likely greater than Bankai, considering it's supposed to be like a holified Bankai amps, and we know holification and Bankai are like individually are pretty strong on their own, as we've seen before within Bleach. But on like an overall, like the abilities you would get from both. So let's say you go from like your base human self to either of these states, you get to choose. So notably, pure aesthetic wise, I think I would probably actually go for Assault Mode, because I think I can make the aesthetic anything I want to be, right? Because it's literally just darkness covering your entire form. Like, can you imagine the drip? Can you imagine pulling up in a darkness suit? No, but like, and also the thing is, the Resurrection's really cool too. But the thing is, a lot of them, that's the thing, you can't exactly tell what you look like in your Resurrection, because the thing is, a Resurrection is essentially just returning to your base self, or like your holified state, or like properly returning to it. Still keeping a lot of your human traits and tendencies, but returning to the holified state. And I don't know what my inner beast is. So like for the design I went with, I just went with like a mostly armorized version of myself, but I'm not sure if that's the case. Like Noitora had 6 arms and was a bug man. Nell was a centaur. Grimjow was a cat man. Like it's cool, and I do like some of the designs, but like there's a spectrum, right? You have your Starks, and then you have your Zamaris. And I don't think I ever want to look like Zamari. So like the thing is, pure aesthetic wise, it's a gamble. But let's say you get the aesthetic you want, like you get to pick. So if I could get like the basic Assault Mode look, right, where it's essentially manageable, I just cover myself in darkness, and I'm perfectly good on that front, and I can manipulate to whatever I want to. That's pretty darn cool. However, if I also get a Resurrection and I can essentially hard customize it, I feel like covering myself in hielo would be also really, really cool. But it'd be bad. I look extremely weird, right? Because the best I would probably have is like 2 eye holes, and then the rest. And of course, you have to have the hole somewhere. Like you can't hide that, unfortunately. And I know the hollow hole isn't necessarily a weakness on the Resurrection. Like I don't think it's ever been established to be a weakness. But like I just wouldn't. I wouldn't want you to be looking at me and be like, is that a gap in your chest? Like or wherever it would be. But in terms of sheer aesthetic-wise, I think I am going to go with Assault Mode regardless, just because it's more flexible, right? I can essentially mimic whatever my Resurrection would look like with the darkness. Now, in terms of raw power, I am going to give it to Resurrection. Like, I think the highest multiplier you can get Assault Mode is, like, assuming, and this is big assumptions, that it's a multiplier off of Demon Mark, and it's, like, a 3 to 5 times multiplier off of that, just because of how much bigger the insignia gets on his head when he uses it. I'm always iffy about that, because it throws me off a little bit. But I've also heard like 20 times amps, because technically it should be a superior version of Berserk Meliodas, because it essentially is Berserk Meliodas without the limiter. But strange stuff. However, I think for a raw power boost, consistently, like beyond, you have to argue for Assault Mode to be one of many multipliers, whether it be the initial 3 times if you want to use combat classes, whether it be 5 times based on the size of the mark, whether it be even 20 times based off link. Like there's stuff you can do for it. However, I think the flat, like just clear, contained, consistent amp of other section is just, it's more stable. Like if I use my Resurrection, I'm becoming 5 to 10 times stronger. Just solid donut. Like you can't go lower than that, essentially, because the Resurrection is meant to compete with the Bankai of any Shinigami. So that's pretty darn good. Say I even get the weakest end, like becoming a solid 5 times stronger on command is amazing. And the abilities of both is where it comes into contention a bit more, right? Because if I like have Assault Mode, by proxy I would become a demon. So That means I get all the soul stealing, the darkness manipulation, the flight, the durability amps, the attacking amps. Like, in terms of just sheer flexibility, Assault Mode can do a lot. Like, remember Meliodas versus Esteros and Zeldris? Like, he was in the midst of literally throwing darkness hands with Zeldris, and at the same time, his cape came out and blocked Esteros. Like, Meliodas was literally multitasking mid-battle. He just, because he could. He had the full freedom and flexibility, and having that much, like, free matter under your control would be very, very useful just in general life. Like, oh no, the remote's on the other side of the room. I'm in Assault Mode. It'd be so weird to just be like, what a mundane task. Time to transform into my strongest state. Go Assault Mode and just launch out and grab something and then drag it back to you. But I think it'd also be pretty cool. And also, the flight is cool. But the thing is, on the other side of that, you become a Rancor who's in Resurrección. So you also get all their abilities, which means the flight, the Ceros, the sensing abilities, the irrational hunger for human soul. But like, I feel like that's less of a thing with Arancars. Like, they're more animalistic than, like, say, Shinigami, except for Kenpachi. But they aren't constantly hungering for souls. Like, at worst, I think the most you'll get with a Resurrection is like a slight craving for battle, and nothing's gonna be able to stop you in our world, so you'll be perfectly fine there. But I think the general abilities you would get with Resurrection would almost balance out, if not equal. I'll say they'll be slightly inferior to activating Assault Mode, because the sheer variety demons get is insane. Because the thing with the Resurrection is that if someone does manage to damage you, you can't regen. Meanwhile, someone could literally slice you in half when you're in Assault Mode, and you'll just merge back together. So I think that's the only deciding factor, ability-wise, in terms of what I would want between the two. Because remember, only Ukiura is able to heal himself, and even then, it's not to the same degree. Like, but see, this is a question, because you have to start out as a demon. I was gonna say you start in human state and then you transcend to either a Rancor or demon, but I think you have to be a base demon, because it wouldn't make sense, because Assault Mode is like something only the highest levels of demon can reach, or like those who are imbued with multiple commandments, neither of which are healthy. So I think, for our sakes, we're gonna make you an Arancor or a demon to start off with, and you have 7 hearts to spare. Meanwhile, in Arancor, you got the 1 and you gotta keep it pushing. Like, that's all you got. So I think in terms of viability, in terms of just raw diversity, you can definitely get more out of being in Assault Mode, like the flexibility of the tendrils, the ability to have constant armor defense, the ability to steal souls, all the stuff like that. You get more out of having just straight access to Assault Mode. I'm going to definitely do a Demon versus Hollow video, like which one would be better overall. I'll be going over all that more in depth. But this is just specifically talking about the forms and the perks that would come with them. Then the next question becomes, which one is less of a... I'm actually not sure which one is less of a stamina drain, because notably neither of the users of each of these forms ever admit to any stamina loss for the form. They just exist. And essentially a Resurrection for a Hollow is just a state. It's like a revert to 0. This is just their natural state. Meanwhile, Meliodas managed to stay in Assault Mode just like it wasn't an issue for him at all, and Esteros sort of accidentally entered it, and he was just fine. Neither expressed stamina issues, so I think you're evenly fine on stamina. Then what else is left? Durability. Once again, I mean, your hero gets stronger, so that I think that would go to your Resurrection. Though the long-term durability with the regen, and obviously darkness is a really good shield that could be useful too. I don't know. So like, off the top of my dome, I think in our world, I think I'm definitely gonna want to go with Assault Mode, just because it's a generally more useful form, and it's usually less monstrous. Like, unless you give yourself the Stark treatment, you have a high likelihood of turning into a beast. Like, if you pull up and was essentially the equivalent to a dark suit, no one's gonna question you. Like, you could pull up to work. Ooh, it'd be hard to explain the demon tattoo. That would suck. Okay, maybe not. Don't show up to work in it, but that'd be easier to explain than the literal monster reversion form you have. So I think in our world, I'm definitely gonna take Assault Mode. However, for the Bleach verse, I can definitely, or like inverse, I could definitely see the argument for Resurrección because it should be comparable, if not superior, to Bankai, which is really, really good just as an amp to have on hand. And two, it's a form that doesn't have a direct hard counter to it. Like, the thing with Assault Mode is that if you run into that one Goddess Clan member that's got some beef with you, they'll vaporize you. Well, depends on how strong they are, but still, they'll do some numbers to your body because their particle breaks down your particle, and that's no fun for you. So yeah, I think overall, out of verse, I'm gonna give it to Assault Mode just because the flexibility of the form is too good for me to pass up all the extra perks. Meanwhile, in verse, for each of the respective verses, I'm taking Resurrection just because the power, the durability, the speed amp, like the general baseline amp is too good to pass up for those respective verses, especially considering how heavily combat oriented both verses are. However, those are my thoughts. Please tell me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off.